Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of The Green Room. In The Green Room, I get to unpack all those great stories and anecdotes and the business lessons I learn in talking to business owners just like you every single day. So sit back, relax, buckle up and enjoy this week's episode of The Green Room podcast. Hello everyone and welcome to the Green Room podcast. Today's episode is for you if you've sent out a quote in the last month that's gone completely silent. In the last 5 or 6 weeks particularly, I don't know what's going on, I can't pinpoint the root cause, but so many of my clients are struggling to get work moving, they've put out the quotes that might have once been taken up straight away, or quotes that you thought were needed to go today because the client was desperate to get started. And it's just really difficult and clunky to pull them through the pipeline. And that's what today's episode is all about. So if you've got clients who love the work, they can see the value, but they can't quite pull the trigger. And everyone's interested, but nobody has decided. And that's the great challenge we seem to be in a really interesting and precarious phase in the market for so many industries at the moment, and it seems to have come on reasonably quickly. So that's what we're getting into today. Why buyers are hesitating, what that science does to you psychologically, and most importantly, how to protect your business without discounting your way into a corner. So stay with me today. This is an important one. So let's paint the picture, because I'm betting a lot of you are living this right now. The market hasn't collapsed. The phones haven't stopped ringing. Inquiries are coming in. The scopes are being written, the briefs are being written, and the quotes are going out, but everything has slowed down. Sign-offs that used to take a week are now taking a month. Projects that were definitely going ahead are just not going ahead yet. Clients who shook your hand are now waiting on a committee, a revised scope, another round of meetings, and just a little bit more time to think. That little bit more time, however, it's expensive. When you're the one carrying the wages, the rent, the equipment, the emotional baggage and weight of keeping the whole thing moving. And here's what it does to you. It's not just the cash flow pressure, although that's real. It's what happens in your head when the silence stretches out, when this goes on and on, days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. You start second guessing your pricing. You mentally bank revenue that hasn't landed, then you quietly unbank it when the silence continues. You follow up once, you follow up twice, but then you stop following up because you don't want to look desperate. You start keeping weak opportunities alive because the numbers look good in the pipeline. You take work you'd normally decline, and here's the big one, you start negotiating against yourself before the client has even asked. And eventually when the silence gets loud enough, you do the one thing that feels like it might fix everything, and that's discounting. Sometimes you might call it flexibility, sometimes you might call it sharpening the pencil, sometimes you call it meeting the market. But if you're honest with yourself, and really honest, a lot of the time it's fear dressed up as strategy, and you've run out of other ideas. I want to sit with that for a second, because I'm not saying this to judge anyone, and I'm not saying it because I've seen it happen to really capable people who have built great businesses and have genuine value to offer, and then quietly give it away because the silence got too loud. And if you're sitting there thinking, yep, that's me, you're not alone. You really aren't. It's a very challenging time and a very challenging market at the moment. But here's the thing about discounting. It almost never fixes the real problem. When buyers hesitate, price is usually just the thing that they can point to because it's easier to say. It's a bit expensive than to say, I'm not sure about the timing. I don't have the internal capability to make this work. I can't get the finance committee to sign off until Q3. We're not ready to go yet. Those are the real objections, but it's a bit expensive is the one that you seem to keep hearing. So you drop the price and what happens? The hesitation doesn't go away. You just reduce your margin while leaving the real problem completely untouched. And worse, you've trained the client that waiting is now worth it. You've told the market quietly but very clearly that your original price, well, it may not have been the real price. And here's another thing that discounting does that nobody talks about. It shifts the risk onto you. The client still hasn't committed. They're still unsure about the timing. You've just made yourself cheaper to keep on ice while they work out what they're doing. The better response when buyers hesitate is not to become cheaper, it's to become clearer. Clearer on the value you deliver, clearer on what it costs people to delay, clearer on your terms, and clearer on what you need to proceed. That's what changes the dynamic, not a lower number. So I want to tell you about a client I work with. I'll call him Marcus. Marcus runs an industrial electrical contracting business, services manufacturing plants and processing facilities across regional Australia. Him and his business have got a really good reputation. They've got a strong crew, very skillful crew, the kind of operator clients call first because they know that gets the work done well, gets it done correctly and gets it done right. When the market slowed, it didn't slow the way most people expect. The phones didn't stop ringing. Projects were real, but they weren't moving, and they're not moving. Approvals were sitting in procurement queues. Capital expenditure sign-offs that used to come through in 2 to 3 weeks were now taking 2 or 3 months. Plant managers who wanted the work done were waiting on finance committees, and Marcus was waiting on all of them. His forward order book actually looks stronger on paper. His bank account, however, told a very different story. He was holding capacity for projects, and this is a really tricky piece. He was holding capacity for projects that hadn't been given the green light. So carrying a crew that he couldn't afford to lose because the moment approvals came through, he'd need every one of them on site immediately, committing to materials weeks before mobilisation and letting his own payment terms slide to preserve relationships. He was acting like the bank. He was funding his client's indecision with his own cash flow and doing it in silence. When we sat down together, the first thing we looked at wasn't his quoting, it was his contract terms. His agreement said nothing meaningful about approval times, no provision for what happened when a signed contract sat dormant for 60 or 90 days, no mechanism to recover the cost of held capacity around getting his people sitting around, no remobilisation clause if a project paused or restarted. He was giving his clients an open-ended option on his business and charging them nothing for it. So we changed that. 3 things specifically. First, project commencement clause. If a signed project hadn't received a start instruction within 30 days, it triggered repricing. That wasn't punishment or punitive. It was just real. The cost of holding a crew for 3 months is real. The contract needed to reflect that, and we needed to create some sort of urgency. The second thing we did was the deposit structure tied to the approval milestone. So clients who wanted Marcus's crew paid a booking fee or a start fee when the contract was signed, not after we'd done the work. So this effectively bought them their place in the queue and was able to say, we have people here ready to go to do your job, and this is our startup phase. So they didn't do it when the first invoice was raised. That single change where we invoiced beforehand when the contract was signed, not when we'd done the first lot of work. I get that that's not going to be possible for everyone, especially when you're working with large multinational companies. However, if we can get that startup fee, if you like, as a milestone when on signing of the contract, it gives us some cash flow to be able to then fund our people as we get underway in the project. And then if there's a delay, we at least have got some funds to tide us over. So that single change in this case, because he was able to do that, single change shifted meaningful cash forward and gave clients a financial reason to accelerate their own internal approvals. Suddenly their delay had a cost as well, not just to us. And third, and this one's subtle, but it's quite powerful, Marcus changed the conversation he was having with procurement contacts. Not a complaint, a business conversation. We want to be ready to go the day you get sign off. To do that, we need a realistic picture of where this sits internally. He's asking the question very deliberately around where it sits internally to understand the delays and not just kid himself and hope that it will move forward quickly. He was actually trying to get a read on what his pipeline and his start dates really look like. That question positioned him as operationally serious. It also gave him real information, which projects were genuinely imminent, which ones would drift for months, and he could make resourcing decisions based on fact, not on hope. Within 2 quarters, his cash position had stabilised. not because the market changed, but because he stopped absorbing the cost of his client's slowness himself. Now, we were able to do this at the start of 2026 with this particular client. But what I'm seeing was that was probably the start of it. The last 6 to 8 weeks, it seems to have accelerated across industries. And so this becomes even more relevant to you sitting there listening, thinking about, should I discount, should I start to buy clients or not? And the last thing he said to me when we wrapped it up, and I'll never forget this, he said, I was treating the approval delay like it was my problem to manage, but it wasn't. It was their processes. I just needed to stop funding it. So that's it. The whole mindset shift right there. You are not a bank. Your job is to try and put subtle pressure, and there's 3 ways there to do it. Number one, putting commencement clause, and if it doesn't hit a certain date, then it triggers a reprice. Second was get deposit structure tied up and approval early upon contract signing. And the third one was to really ask the very deliberate question, when will this be going ahead? And that made a huge difference. So what do you do with this? Well, let me give you 4 things to act on right now in this current market. Number one, know your real position, not a vague sense of where things feel and where they might be. A proper 13-week cash flow forecast that shows where the gaps will appear. I've recommended this to clients for years, and I'll say it again, the ones who actually do it, and that's not many, but particularly those in the building industry, I've had great success with cash flow forecast because it's so lumpy. It's based on milestones. The expenses aren't, they're very smooth, your wages and so forth, but certainly the milestones come in a very lumpy format, and you can actually see the gaps. So my builders particularly all run cash flow forecasts, but other industries where you work on milestones, you work on projects, and the cash can be a bit lumpy. It's a really, really valuable peace of mind tool that really helps you see where your business is at. It's a genuine game changer, and that visibility gives you the control, and it takes away that anxiety of not knowing. Second one, and not only that, by the way, it gives you, if you have to then go and find other resources, you have to go and get capital to try and tide you over. At least you can see where you're at. You can, in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, which I love, one of the best business books of all time, one of his things is confront the brutal facts. And if you can't see it, you can't deal with it. So the second one is clean up your pipeline. Stop treating everyone as equal. Some opportunities are warm, some are lukewarm, some are dead. But you really haven't, the client hasn't had the courtesy to tell you yet. A pipeline full of maybes is not a pipeline. It's a wish list with a dollar value attached. Get really honest about what's real in your pipeline so you can once again confront those brutal facts and do something about it. Number 3, stop carrying all the risk yourself. So deposits, retainers, booking fees, stage payment structures. They're not aggressive, they're professional. They remind the client that the commencement works both ways and that you're not a bank. If you want to hold your capacity and your capability and your people, that should have a cost attached to it. And remember, in business, the client has to pay. When we end up paying, we end up being the bank. Ultimately, we end up leaking money, and profitability becomes very elusive. And number 4, protect your state of mind. So slow markets do strange things to very capable people. They make you reactive, emotional, and too available. You make your worst decisions from an exhausted, anxious version of yourself. Lean into your people. If you haven't got a mentor, have a mentor or a peer group or a trusted advisor who you can help make decisions from the grounded version of yourself, not the one that's depleted and scared and worried about where it's all going. That's number 4. So here's the thing about slow cycles. The market will move when it moves. You don't control that timeline. And when we feel out of control, for many of us, it creates anxiety and we start to catastrophize and things get big on us. What you can control is what you do with this period, how you respond, not react. The business owners who come out of a slow cycle stronger are the ones who tightened their systems, got honest about their pipeline, and refused to let uncertainty make their pricing decisions for them. They didn't discount, they got clearer. Nobody may be in a hurry but you at the moment, and that's what I'm seeing. But that doesn't mean you shrink to meet them. It means you give them a reason to move and you structure your business so that their delay doesn't become your crisis. That's the work. And if you're doing it, I want to hear from you. You can find me at chrisgreen.au, connect with me on LinkedIn, or send me a message directly. Tell me where you're at. Tell me what's working. Tell me what's not. I read everything that comes in. And if today's episode was useful, share it with one of your business owners who needs to hear it as well.